At the housewarming party, my cousin won the fireplace door and I received the deed to the attic. That phrase echoed in my mind as if someone had slammed a door right in front of me. The entire room, which seconds before had been filled with laughter, toasts and hugs, plunged into an awkward, almost uncomfortable silence. The guests exchanged quick glances, as if they were assessing not only the gift I had just received, but also my reaction. It was as if everyone knew something I was completely unaware of, and the way they looked away only made everything even more enigmatic. My cousin raised his eyebrows, surprised and proud of the immense, new and imposing fireplace he had just acquired. Everyone made excited comments about how it would warm the house, how it would make everything cozier during the winter. He smiled, radiant, receiving compliments as if he had just won an important prize. Meanwhile, I held a thin folder with old yellowed papers, heavy with history, but light in meaning, at least at that moment. The feeling was confusing. Why me? Why that? Why right in front of everyone? The whole family seemed to expect me to react in some specific way, but I didn't know how. Some had expressions of pity, others of expectation, and a few even seemed relieved. That envelope wasn't just a gift, it carried something that transcended the simple gesture, and curiously, nobody explained anything. I forced a polite smile, trying to hide the tightness in my chest, but the truth is I had no idea what it meant, and that was exactly the problem. Why would anyone give the deed to an attic? Why to me, of all people? And above all, why was there such an air of secrecy? Thus begins the question that would guide everything that followed. What was the family trying to show me or hide? For as long as I can remember, my relationship with my cousin has never been easy. He was always seen as the protected one, the pride of the family, the one who always seemed to do everything right, even when he didn't. It wasn't exactly his fault, but the favoritism was so obvious that it became impossible to ignore. While he received praise for any small gesture, I had to work 3 times harder to receive a simple, very good. Over time I learned to swallow this discomfort, but it never completely went away. The gifts that day were chosen by our grandparents, the same ones who always placed us in different positions without really explaining why. They had a peculiar way of showing affection, for some hugs and sweet words, for others cold advice and responsibilities. And guess which group I belonged to? My cousin was constantly praised for his maturity, despite rarely demonstrating it. I, on the other hand, was in charge of the difficult tasks, the serious conversations, the decisions that nobody wanted to make, while everyone was commenting on the fireplace he had received, a perfect symbol of comfort, of centrality, of belonging. I couldn't help but remember all the other times the family's balance tipped in his favor. Birthdays, trips, compliments at the dinner table. He always received the best seat, the best gift, the best comment. And it wasn't just my impression. Uncles, cousins, and even neighbors made a point of reinforcing this over the years. That document in my hands seemed like just another chapter in that story. Once again, I received what nobody wanted. Once again, I was left with the forgotten, hidden, leftover part. And the more I recalled those moments, the tighter the feeling of inferiority became in my chest, leaving a bitter taste of always being the second option, or perhaps the last. But something about that night was different. This time, the difference didn't just seem unfair, it seemed intentional, and that made everything much stranger and more dangerous. The family's new home looked like it came straight out of one of those architectural catalogues that blend elegance and sentimental value. Large windows let in the soft afternoon light, illuminating wooden furniture that still smelled of varnish, light-colored walls, antique paintings, carefully chosen details. Everything seemed to have been designed to convey a feeling of coziness, as if every corner had been conceived to welcome generations. The party was taking place in the main room, where everyone seemed naturally drawn to the newly installed fireplace, a gift from my cousin. It stood there, robust, imposing, with light-colored stones, modern yet traditional design. When lit, it cast warm shadows on the walls, creating that familiar atmosphere reminiscent of winter, hot chocolate, and stories passed down from grandparents to grandchildren. The fireplace wasn't just a decorative object, it was a symbol. The honor of the house, the heart of the home, the space where photos would be taken, where family gatherings would happen, where memories would be built. To say that someone had received the fireplace as a gift was almost like declaring, "You are the center." And then there was the attic, forgotten, dusty, silent, a space no one would visit unless absolutely necessary. Unlike the fireplace, warm, vibrant, celebrated, the attic was cold, dark, mysterious. It wasn't part of the house's guided tours. It wasn't shown to guests. It wasn't in conversations, photos, or plans. It was like a blank page in the family's history, one everyone knew existed but avoided mentioning. The attic carried the weight of old memories, of piled-up objects, of stories that were never told. And on that day, while my cousin received the fireplace amidst applause, I held the deed to a space that seemed more like a symbol of abandonment, secrecy, and oblivion. The difference between the two gifts created a silent tension that spread through the atmosphere, as if the house itself were divided between light and shadow, between what is celebrated and what is hidden. The feeling was clear. That division had not been random. The house wanted to tell a story, and I, for the first time, was being pushed inside it. When they handed me the deed to the attic, I felt my face heat up in a way I couldn't even hide. It was a mixture of embarrassment, shame, and a doubt that seemed to grow inside my chest like a tight knot. While my cousin showed off the fireplace like a trophy, receiving hugs, congratulations, and exaggerated praise, I held that old envelope like someone holding a problem they don't yet know how to name. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The glances exchanged were almost palpable. Some family members observed discreetly, others pretended not to see. There was even someone who flashed a strange smile, one of those that doesn't reach the eyes, as if hiding something behind the expression. The silence that formed around me wasn't just uncomfortable, it was accusatory. It seemed to say, he still hasn't realized. My cousin, on the other hand, seemed to float. He hugged the fireplace as if he had just received the key to a promising future. And perhaps he had. After all, the fireplace was beautiful, symbolic, central. It was the place in the house that everyone would use, that would appear in all the photos, that would warm all the gatherings. The kind of gift that carries status, importance, belonging. Meanwhile, I was trying to understand why someone would give me the deed to a space that no one visited, a room that wasn't even part of the family's daily life. I tried to maintain a polite smile, but my mind was buzzing. Why me? What do they expect me to do with this? Why was it handed over like this in front of everyone? The more I analyzed people's reactions, the clearer it became that this gift wasn't as simple as it seemed. It was as if the attic was an unresolved secret, a territory that nobody wanted to claim, but that needed, for some reason, to be passed on. And somehow, they decided that this someone was me. With each passing minute, the discomfort grew. The party continued, but I felt out of place, carrying something that no one wanted to talk about, and the more I stared at the writing, the more an unsettling feeling grew inside me. The attic was hiding something, and whether I liked it or not, that was now my responsibility. On the same day as the party, when the house finally fell silent and the last guests had left, I felt the need to go up to the attic. It wasn't ordinary curiosity. It was almost as if something up there was calling to me. The narrow door leading to the attic creaked so sharply that it seemed to protest any attempt to open it. When I finally managed to unlock it, a thick smell of old wood escaped, like a breath from decades of storage. The staircase was narrow, each step creaking under my feet as if protesting my presence. The dim light from the lamp hanging from the ceiling offered little illumination, creating shadows that stretched across the dust-covered walls. The air was heavy, dry, laden with a feeling of abandonment that made my skin crawl. Each step seemed to reveal a little more of a story that no one ever wanted to tell. When I reached the top, I realized that the place wasn't just old, it was carefully neglected. Stacked boxes, furniture covered with old sheets, chests locked with rusty padlocks. Everything inside seemed to have been left there on purpose, as if hiding was more important than discarding. And it was while rummaging among these objects that I found the first unexpected item. A small, heavy locked box with signs of wear on the edges. It didn't seem to have been opened in a long time. Beside her was a stack of old photos, all in black and white. In the images, familiar faces, yet strangely distant. Family members I only knew from scattered stories, others I didn't even know existed. In some photos I noticed tense, almost melancholic expressions, as if they were posing to hide something. I continued exploring and found a bundle of yellowed letters, tied together with a faded cord. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned, full of words that seemed laden with stored emotions. Next to them was a folder with inventories and documents I had never seen before, listing objects, properties, transactions, and names that completely changed my understanding of my own family. That's when the feeling intensified. It wasn't just an attic, it was a repository of secrets, and at the exact moment I held that locked box in my hands, a thought flashed through my mind with absolute clarity. And that's when I discovered something that would change my relationship with my family forever. I continued exploring the attic, with the feeling that with each box opened, an entire layer of my family's history crumbled before me. It wasn't just dust I found there, it was the past, it was memory, it was truth. When I finally managed to force open the lock on the small locked box, the contents took my breath away. Inside there was a collection of old documents, some too fragile to be handled carelessly. They were deeds, receipts, contracts, and notes mentioning properties I'd never heard of, land left by ancestors, and even shares in businesses that seemed to have vanished over time. Among these papers, I found something even more unsettling, a series of letters written by a relative I only knew by name, my great-uncle Samuel, someone about whom little was said. The letters revealed that he had been estranged from the family after disagreements over the division of inheritance and management of assets. I discovered that he lived in the attic during his last months in the house, isolated and forgotten, while the rest of the family lived just a few meters away, in comfortable rooms warmed by the fireplace. His writing conveyed sadness, but also a desperate plea for someone to one day discover what had really happened. Next to the letters, there was a folder with detailed inventories, old debts that were never paid, agreements made in secret, and most importantly, proof that some of the family's properties had been misappropriated, and that the attic was, in a way, the last space that still held original records of everything. But the most striking item was at the bottom of the box, a small gold medallion with the initials SR, Samuel Rocha, wrapped in a carefully folded handkerchief, a sentimental treasure that had belonged to him and had never been given to any relative. The handkerchief was accompanied by a short note: "For those who finally find the truth, take care of what others have hidden." At that moment I understood that the deed to the attic was not a bad gift, nor a gesture of contempt. It was a key, a responsibility, perhaps even a silent plea for justice. The attic wasn't all that was left. That was what mattered, and whether I liked it or not, everything was now in my hands. The next day, I came down from the attic with a throbbing headache and the documents pressed against my chest. With each page I read, my family's story seemed to unravel and reconstruct itself before me, revealing secrets I never imagined existed. I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. I needed answers, and they could only come from someone who had always been involved. I gathered everyone in the living room, right in front of the fireplace my cousin had received. The contrast between the heat of the flames and the cold I felt inside only made the moment more ironic. I took a deep breath and asked, directly, clearly, without beating around the bush, "Why did I receive this? What do you want me to find out?" The atmosphere immediately became tense. My grandparents exchanged uneasy glances. My uncle cleared his throat, trying to disguise his discomfort. My mother pressed her hands against her lap. The voices began low, full of vague justifications. "It's just an old space, eh? We always wanted someone to take care of it. There's nothing special up there." But the words didn't hold up. There was too much hesitation in their sentences, too much fear in their eyes. My cousin, still proud of the fireplace, seemed uncomfortable for the first time. He tried to laugh, saying I was exaggerating, but as soon as I put the documents on the table, the laughter died instantly. I retrieved old photos, letters, deeds, inventories, everything that had been hidden in the attic for decades. The letters from great-uncle Samuel, revealing his isolation and the injustice done to him, made my grandmother pale. The receipts for unpaid debts made my uncle nervous. The photos showed faces and moments that had never been mentioned. Each item was a piece of the truth, and each piece brought to light the silent guilt that everyone pretended not to carry. My grandfather's voice, normally firm, trembled when he finally spoke. "You weren't supposed to find this, not now." And at that moment I realized what I had only suspected until then. The family hadn't given me the attic as a gift, but as an attempt to cover up something they didn't want to admit. But it was too late. The truth had already been found, and no one there would be able to hide it again. After the confrontation, I took only the essential documents with me and returned to the attic. There was something there that I still hadn't fully understood, a final piece that held everything else in place. As I climbed the creaking stairs again, I felt the atmosphere was different. It wasn't just the silence, It was as if the attic itself was waiting for me to understand what it had always been trying to tell me. I searched through the boxes, the chests, the photos again, until I found an envelope hidden at the bottom of an old drawer. The paper was yellowed and fragile, as if it had been touched by decades of neglect. In the corner, a handwriting that I immediately recognized, the same initials as the medallion, S.R., Samuel Rocher, my great-uncle. I carefully opened the envelope, and inside was a letter completely different from the others. It was a direct message, written as if he knew that only I would find it. The letter began like this: "If you are reading this, it's because someone finally had the courage to look where everyone else has looked away." My heart ached. Samuel continued explaining that the attic wasn't just the place where he lived. It was the only part of the house that he truly owned. The attic, left to him by his father years before any official division, was revealed to him. He explained that, due to internal conflicts, his inheritance rights were taken away, manipulated, and erased from the most recent documents. The attic remained hidden because it was the only physical and historical proof that the family had committed a great injustice. But then came the part that broke me down emotionally. At the end of the letter he wrote, "I chose to leave everything to you. You were the only one who never treated me like a burden. I believed in you when no one else did." At that moment, I understood everything. The attic wasn't the leftovers, nor a silent punishment. It wasn't the same old unpleasant gift. The royal inheritance, the part that the family tried to hide for years, the part my great-uncle kept for whoever one day would have the courage to face the truth. The revelation changed something deep within me. The feeling of inferiority that had accompanied me throughout my life transformed into strength, clarity, and purpose. For the first time, I wasn't just leftovers. I was the chosen one. The attic didn't just reveal one secret. He told the person who I was, and who I had always been, to the one who truly mattered. When I came down from the attic for the last time, something inside me was no longer the same. The folder with documents, photos, and letters was firmly in my hands, but the weight I felt no longer came from the paper. It came from understanding, from the truth finally revealed, from the certainty that, for the first time, I understood my place in that family. As I walked through the house, I looked again at the fireplace my cousin had received with such pride. It was lit, casting warm light across the room, illuminating smiling faces and creating that atmosphere of comfort that everyone admires so much. But now, looking at it, I realized something I hadn't been able to see before. The fireplace was all appearance. It was beautiful, welcoming, elegant, but it was merely aesthetic, a decorative, symbolic piece, useful only for warming the moments the family chose to showcase. The attic, in contrast, was everything the family tried to hide. It was memory, it was history, it was the raw truth, unfiltered, undecorated to impress visitors. The attic held deep connections, letters that revealed honest feelings, documents that exposed past choices, mistakes made, injustices perpetuated. I held the last memento of someone who truly believed in me, someone who saw value where the rest of the family insisted on not seeing it. And above all, the attic represented rights that had been manipulated, erased, distorted, hidden amidst dust and silence. Now all of that was in my hands. I was no longer the forgotten relative who received the leftovers. I was the person to whom the truth had been entrusted, and that changed everything within me. I felt a newfound confidence growing in my chest, a sense of autonomy I had never experienced before. It was as if I had finally found the invisible thread that connected me to my own story. My posture changed. My voice changed. My gaze changed. I realized that I no longer needed to compete for attention or beg for recognition. I had something much bigger, clarity about who I was and the value I carry. And for the first time, I understood that sometimes the simplest gift, it is precisely the one that holds the greatest power. Looking back at everything that happened, the party, the sharing of gifts, the discomfort, the forgotten attic, and finally, the truth revealed, I realize how small gestures can carry enormous meaning. For years I thought my family saw me as someone secondary, someone who always got what was left over, and in fact, that was often the case. But now I understand that life has unexpected ways of repositioning people, and that the truth finds curious paths to emerge, even when attempts are made to bury it under layers of silence. The phrase that has echoed within me ever since, and which I now leave with you, is simple, yet powerful. Sometimes, the strangest gift is precisely the one that reveals who we really are. The attic, once seen as a forgotten corner, became the central point of a story that redefined my identity. It showed me that what seems smaller isn't always less important. Sometimes, what we receive without fanfare, without applause, and without prominence is precisely what holds the deepest value. The value of knowing the truth, of reconnecting with roots that were denied, of reclaiming a voice they tried to silence. And this experience also made me think about how families, even without conscious intention, construct narratives that shape our perception of belonging. Often we grow up believing in roles that have been imposed on us: the favorite, the invisible one, the problematic one, the responsible one. But the reality is that in the silence of life's attics, there are stories that disprove these superficial versions, stories that reveal injustices, hidden affections, sincere loves, and choices that didn't reach us. Therefore, I extend a sincere invitation. Reflect on your own history, your family, your emotional attics. Sometimes what seems unimportant holds answers you never even imagined you were looking for. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever received something that seemed insignificant, but then changed everything? Tell us in the comments. Your story could inspire others, and if this story touched you, leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this.